Hi, this is Jennifer with BrainLink. So we're going to talk for a few minutes about returning to school after a brain injury or concussion. I feel like it's really helpful to just point out how the correct information at the time of treatment can make such a difference. So even though we have another video that really goes into detail on the concussion protocol, I'm just going to touch on it for a moment. With the concussion protocol, we have put together this simple explanation and resources for healthcare providers to consider concussion a 2-visit diagnosis. And it's spelled out here on this handout that you're looking at over here on the right. But essentially, the first visit is symptom evaluation and patient education. The parent will go home with a checklist and symptoms list to look for in case they persist. They don't leave the doctor's office unless they have already scheduled a second visit for follow-up. That visit will happen in 4 weeks if symptoms persist, and at that time they would be referred for another specialist for treatment if needed, or if the best situation, if symptoms do not persist, then cancel that appointment. And then it's very important to check back every year about the concussion and make sure there aren't any new symptoms or changes. So with this protocol in place, this is going to set up a child for a much more successful return to school. Okay, so when they're going back to school, maybe they've had 2 or 3 days of rest, maybe in some cases they needed longer. They're going to need to go back to school very likely in a gradual way. So this might take place over just 2 or 3 days, or this might take a little bit longer for the child depending on their injury and their symptoms. But they could return as a partial day, or they could go back to school for half days and then eventually work towards a full school day. Rest can be very important to agree upon. So having a little break for rest and having the student know that they are allowed to do this in the agreement with the teacher and the parent all on the same page can be really important. And they can get these suggestions from the physician as well to share with the school. But it might be done in simple increments. So maybe rest might be needed by simply putting their head down on the desk in the classroom. They might still be able to stay in the school building, but just go to the nurse's office for a little better rest and a break from the classroom. Or in maybe the more extreme case, they might just need to go home for the day. So when we're thinking about younger kids, under 5 years old, making the transition to preschool after a TBI or concussion, it can really help them to have a comfort item from home. That might be a stuffed animal, it might be a blanket. Something like that can really make the difference in how they feel about going back to school and having something to make them feel secure. And that can be taken away slowly over time, no rush. Not pushing the child to participate at first can be helpful so that they can get comfortable and kind of reintegrate into their classroom and their friends after being away for a little while. Sometimes even a short time, just a few days in a weekend or missing a week of preschool to a younger child can really seem and feel like a longer time than it is. And it can be hard to remember rules and the routines. And even if a child had kind of mastered these before the injury, it's good to go ahead and give them some little gentle reminders and encouragement, and maybe not expect them to be exactly where they were with their abilities right before the injury, and know that those are going to probably come back. It just might take a little extra encouragement. When a child's returning to sport and physical activity, it's going to be very important to know that this cannot happen unless they have no remaining symptoms. The caregivers, the parents, need to understand that returning to sport while symptoms persist can be dangerous. There is a risk of second impact syndrome. And second impact syndrome is something that is potentially life-threatening. It's a very serious situation when someone who has had a concussion and has not healed from that concussion has a second concussion. And then a catastrophic type of injury happens in the brain when there's swelling in the brain. And all of that, sadly, could be avoided by not returning to play too soon. So that is a big reason why many of the states have enacted a sports concussion law, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. When a student is, or student athlete is returning to physical activity, there's a gradual return, and there is a definite procedure to how that needs to be done and overseen by a person trained in concussion. So they need to have someone who really understands how to help them take it slowly, take it step by step, and no new symptoms arising. The Tennessee Department of Health Return to Learn, Return to Play guideline website is right here, and this guideline was created by professionals across the state to ensure that people had good information about returning to learn and returning to play after concussion. Now, the Tennessee Sports Concussion Law covers all sports, public and private schools, and community recreational leagues for children under 18 that require a fee. Our law began in 2014. There are three main parts to the Tennessee concussion law. It's to inform and educate both the student athlete, the coach, and the parents. So education is very important about concussion so that everyone's on the same page and has the same expectations. Second is to remove the athlete immediately from play if there is a suspected concussion. And third is to get medical clearance from a healthcare provider who is experienced in concussion. They cannot return to play unless they have that okay from the doctor. And last, we're going to look here for just a moment at the TSSAA concussion return to play form. This is followed by schools across Tennessee. The return to play form has had some updates. There are several enhancements to better protect the student athlete and the healthcare provider. And what I really want you to take just a moment is to look at here where the healthcare provider and the athlete have to initial that the athlete reports no new symptoms while participating in daily activities, and that the healthcare professional has educated the athlete and the parents about the dangers of returning to play before symptoms have cleared. So they will initial here, and then they can give specific recommendations, the healthcare provider can, about not returning to PE class yet. Maybe they can return to PE class, and then some specific recommendations about sports. Thank you so much for learning about returning to school and activity, and please visit our other training videos to learn more.